Greetings, everyone. Monty Royal checking in with you. I had a few royal concepts I wanted to discuss and see what you thought. Kind of give my 2 cents on what the subject is and what I feel about it. So, the first one is the immigration. Right. At first, I was a little hesitant. I didn't know what to think, and but the more I look into it, the more it seems like, all right. The first idea would be to grant amnesty, right? If they could do that, that would make a lot of things a lot easier. And the second idea is so there's a danger in having illegal immigrants in our economy, right? What it does is it creates black markets. All right. The way I've been thinking about it, logically concluding, if there's a uh, messed up logic, let me know. But I'm thinking illegal immigrants are able to work for less money. It pretty much what I do know is when you get a tourist visa, um, countries like the United States and China are very particular on who they allow to work because when you add labor to an economy, the economy has to, in order for us to pretty much manage the economy, which, systems that we benefit from every day, like Social Security and Medicaid, all kinds of public works, they rely on the federal revenue, the revenue of taxes, you know. That's the basis for all of these nice things we have. Um, so the idea is with illegal immigrants, we're not getting the tax base that we should be getting. All right. Companies are allowed to, pretty much illegal immigrants have jobs that citizens should have, right? And that's an idea of it. It is what it is, kind of. Just saying, if the illegal immigrant wasn't there, then there'd be a citizen that worked there. But if the illegal immigrants aren't there, if the business can't sustain, the business will go under, or the business will take on different business practices in order to accommodate, right? It will change its business practices. So I was thinking, for every illegal immigrant that has a job, a citizen should have it, and but that also goes into property as well. So all those missed opportunities for, um, well, all the missed opportunities for owning property or rentals, right? So I saw that there are apartments, like 50-unit apartments, they got raided by ICE and they're completely empty. Well, what that does is that displaces 50 units that citizens should have a choice to, you know, have the option to rent, right? And so people are being displaced from rentals and properties because of this situation. It's been going on for a long time. No one decided to do anything about it until about now, right? But I remember I had a Monty Royal discussion, and I was explaining how with like drug dealers, they'll let them get away. The detectives will let them get away for so long, and then when the bounty's good, they'll go in and close up, close the guy's operation, arrest him, and usually there's some taken off the top. That's just the American, or that's just the way of the world, I suppose. Um, but it's kind of happening with illegal immigrants now. Like there's this viral post about an Oklahoma bill, which would consider like I don't know if it's Hispanics or illegals. I didn't really read it, but pretty much it would seize the property of Latinos, you know, and it's kind of the same thing. They allow it to happen for so long and for so much to happen, and then then there's a swindling of the assets, the bounty, the booty. um, has been taken, right? So that's one way we can look at it. So I'm still on the fence about the whole. My point of view is that citizens pretty much Social Security and everything we do is tied into the market. And if here's the idea, all right, here's a good one. So the idea is a government's only job really is to count everything and then provide taxes, and that's like the core foundation of the government, right? Everyone pays its dues. So that's the federal government stance. They want everyone to pay their taxes, right? And they count everything. Because what's the point of having a government if, our kingdom, right? If you don't know what's in it, everything has to be accounted for. So they know. And as we progress in society, the micro accountings become nano accounting, become pico accountings, or vice versa if I got those messed up. But yeah, it gets to the point where everything's marketized and like collateralized and valuetized, and even eventually our thoughts, just like like they'll eventually find a way to monetize off of that if they haven't already. And so where was I going? Monetizing thoughts. Okay, so yeah, everything in the country is monetized, and so it's tied into the stock markets and insurance companies and investments, like bonds and stuff. Like there's a pretty interesting thing. It's called CAFR funds, and it's investments that our communities have. Like I can't explain it, but in order to fight against communism, like we have this capitalist system where we have bonds of a bunch of different churches and organizations and like libraries and bridges and stuff. We have all like everything's we own property all over the world. We're invested into it as Americans on the back end. We don't really deal with it, but the institutions that make up our government are deeply invested in interest all over the world, and it's a lot of money. Uh, Look into CAFR funds, and there's a guy from like the 80s or early 90s that does a like explanation of it a lot better than I could. But in order to fight against communism, this off the top of my head, we decided to partner up with other countries, and so we invest and entangle in each other. So our markets are wrapped up, and everyone's owning different. So ownership spread out and very diverse. Everyone's invested into others' communities. It goes down to like the libraries and stuff, and like everything in between state, city, federal government. Like there's other like there are like so many different kinds of bonds out there. I'm not even like able to touch on it, but different bonds. People own bonds to like monk ministries, or monks own bonds and stuff. It's a whole world that's like way deeper and more complex, but inevitably it's a battle against communism. So ownership is spread out and everyone's invested into each other. And so let me wrap this into where I'm going here. The government's job is to count things, right? Have a good idea of where things are and stuff. So illegal immigration causes black markets. People are working without paying taxes. People are able to operate in society without paying sales tax. Eventually get away with without paying the proper property tax. So the federal government and all the governments are missing out on huge revenues, right? And so we have it pretty good in this country. But if we had everything together as we should have, we might even have a higher standard of living. Maybe I don't know if I can argue that, but maybe we would be able to have those things like speed rails. Like you can't govern without the proper information, right? And you have to know, you have to be able to count things. Counties, you count things in the counties and the countries. It's all about counting. And so it undermines the entire integrity of the government when we have a whole system operating as a black market that's not being taxed, that's not being uh, recognized. Maybe in a shadow statistic it can be figured out, but it's not being officially recognized. And all the things we do tie into our social security number, and that ties into the markets. Okay, so we have it pretty good in this country, I'll admit it. There are some things that are messed up, right? And so the argument is maybe things wouldn't be so cattywampus if the immigration issue was taken care of sooner, and we'd all have maybe a much higher living standard. Maybe some of us wouldn't even be here, right? Um, but that's the idea. So that's one. The immigration thing, it's controversial, but it's well, yeah. Let me add on to it. It's like criminal activity is working as a non as an illegal immigrant. I'm not sure. There's so many different ways these people can go through. And so many types of citizenship that's been like created and granted, and so many types of programs for people in between, right? Um, and so they maybe a lot of people were led to believe that they were in a okay position. And then there were some people that just stay past their visas, like they get a visa and they just stay here, and so it's kind of like any other criminal activity. It's like if you knew a guy was selling drugs, the whole community knew what was going on and everyone just let it be. It's just like it's still criminal activity, right? You know what I mean? And so kind of a slippery slope from there. And you allow them to do that, then the drugs get pretty much the idea is the people like maybe the idea is the wrong people getting a hold of money too. So yeah, black markets are around. The wrong people getting a hold of too much money is not a good thing. Um, and that's a real problem our federal government has to face every day. I'm not saying I agree with everything that they're doing, but it's a real concern. And our federal government pretty much we have a lot of benefits that we have, you know, and maybe there's some that can argue that the federal government's too overpowering, but we're already pretty deep into this thing. So either we'll find a way to evolve it to suit our best interests. Eventually that will happen. But the system's going to want its pound of flesh from everyone, and that's going to hurt. So that's kind of what we're in for. So that's kind of my idea on immigration. I'm not sure if anyone else kind of thinks that way, but at first, the first idea is just like, why can't we grant them amnesty, right? It's like that just make things a lot easier. But then again, I went into that long tangent about what we are as citizens, like the idea of what we are, the capacity that we have, and all kinds of other, like to know our position in this world is very difficult for a lot of people to kind of see and wrap your head around because you get into the day to days. But there's a lot of trust built into the system where we're all connected. And so, yeah, that's the first idea. And then the second idea was so there's this process called spectrometry. I think that's how you pronounce it. But they use light to pretty much see what kind of particles are being emitted from a product, like food along the supply chain lines are checked frequently with spectrometry to make sure there's not like bad batches of apples. The food's not gone rancid, right? And there's a movie, Richie Rich, where really good movie with Macaulay Culkin, and good movie if you're a kid, right? And so And that there's a smelling machine where they could smell uh, what's in products. So they used it to find a bomb and a bunch of different gifts. There's like 1,000 gifts, and one of them was a bomb. They use this technology to sniff it out and find it's a good movie. Go check it out. Anyway, so we should have that technology already, and we do. It's in the supply chains, but I think it would be a good idea to put it, more in the grocery stores. So grocery stores couldn't sell bad product, right? And even better idea, it uses light, and it's a very complicated process. So eventually, this will happen. Hopefully, so we'll have like if you get a spectrometer device, it's like almost like a room of equipment, but a computer used to be a room of equipment as well, right? So you get the spectrometer. Like the idea would be to make there's like a sniffing version as well that like I was trying to look into it. I did just a light research, and mostly they're using light, to find out what's coming off of a item, a product, a consumable, edible food and stuff. And it will tell you if it has like arsenic, or if the batch is moldy by what the chemical compound mixture is. And then it's like, all right, well, has this much of these molecules, so it must be mold, right? So that's the idea. Eventually, we'll have that on our phones, and I thought that'd be cool if you can, like, before you have a meal, scan it over. So you can find out if the food is fresh, if the meat was actually fresh when they cooked it, or if the butter was fresh. You can, instead of tasting it, you could just pretty much like scan it and find out. And having it on your phone is a little difficult, but I think they need to have a product like that in grocery stores. And I'd like to make a restaurant where that technology is available at the counter, and we could check the batches of food coming in, and as they get produced, ensure that quality. So maybe that's the future that we missed out on. Maybe, did we miss out on a future? It's hard to say, right? Uh, and that kind of wraps back into the immigration thing. Um, you know, Countries are able to make tremendous leaps and bounds in research with the right funding and the right climate, of population. Uh, so it's tough to say, I don't know what the right answer is, but those are some thoughts that have kind of been bouncing around in my head lately. If you have any thoughts about it, leave it in the comments. And, Monty Royal, I just wanted to check in with you guys and, kind of give you what's on my thoughts. All right. Have a good one, guys.